that hosting major events is about more than what happens inside the venue. It's about creating an impact that reaches far beyond the competition itself. But if the true victory isn't the game, but the ripple effects it leaves behind, how do you balance the pressure of executing a flawless event with the responsibility of ensuring it creates a lasting impact on the community?
Yeah, that's since our inception, one of the things that we have been having in our mission is building our community. And the only way that you can build a community is by thinking about these events in their greatest context and how to leverage these events in a way that makes your community better and builds the community and makes it more effective. And we always think about that in a couple different ways. We think about it creating civic pride, actually doing something that's lasting in the community that people can take advantage of, making the community better than it was before, and giving opportunity to people who wouldn't otherwise have these type of opportunities. And thinking about those, is how that we think about that. And so it's always kind of been the pressure. But I think when we balance that, we're very intentional in making sure that we assign staff to be thinking about those areas that they have to execute on. I mean, swimming trials was a perfect example, where we created a 10-day festival out on Georgia Street with the Eiffel Tower as kind of the landmark on that, and the event in the stadium was groundbreaking. We set attendance records. An Olympic team was chosen. It's the highest pressure meet in the world. All that's happening while we're also having a festival out on Georgia Street, and you have to make sure that you divide those responsibilities up and that you have people that are focused on those things and that people are passionate about those, that's how you make an event, take it from just the sporting event to where it becomes the big event, like it becomes a thing. And we're always focused on making the community better, and I think that's what drives our staff is they care about the community. They care about Indianapolis. They care about Indianapolis being better than it was yesterday, and that's how you're able to handle that pressure of putting on the great event inside the venue, as well as giving the community a great atmosphere, a great event, something they can be proud of, something they can participate in, something that they want to talk to their friends about.
How do you motivate your staff to truly have kind of like that give back mentality, making sure that they're making the best event for someone else? How do you instill that in them?
Yeah, part of that definitely is it's hiring, really getting to the heart when we're hiring people, what's driving them, what is their motivations of why they want to be with the Sports Corp. There's a lot of sporting organizations that you could be a part of, and here you need to have a passion for the community, because that's what we're doing. I mean, you can't just be all about sports. It's got to be about also building the community, thinking about others. And so I think for us, what we try to really do is always connect all that we do. And I talk a lot about chasing excellence, that we need to have excellence. And excellence isn't being perfect. Excellence is actually making mistakes. But excellence is putting your best effort forward each and every day. And so we talk about excellence in our work. And so we try to tie the excellence that we've had in our execution to the outcomes with the community and how that has affected our community and the stories that has generated. And we try to be very intentional about talking about that with our staff and tying those together so they see see very much like, okay, I helped this event happen, and these kids got a new library. The Big Ten football championship every year does a library makeover at an elementary school. We show them those pictures. We show them. We send out email after these type of events happen. We talk about it with our staff, and then they intrinsically want to do that because they're proud that they were a part of that.
You mentioned the word community, and you also said that sports can connect people in ways nothing else can. It's one place where politics, culture, and background get set aside for something bigger. But outside of sports, how can that same spirit of unity or politics, culture, and background take a back seat, be created in everyday life?
Well, that's a tough question. I mean, sports is a unifying factor. I mean, it's amazing how, you think about the Pacers run to the finals, how that just, brought our community together. You think about all the different stuff that we've had, the events that we've put on. It brings the community together, and they work together to achieve the great things, and they work together to achieve these events. And so, how do you bridge that into society is really, that's the question. I think it's because sports is such a it's fun, it's entertainment, it is it's greater than yourself, and it gives people a goal to work towards. I think those are the things that are why people come together in sport. And so I think me personally, I guess maybe if we had more things like that was that goal we're all trying to achieve and work together, maybe we'd have more unity if we had that recipe for more things.
And that idea of unity really connects back to leadership, because it's often a leader's job to bring different people together. And across your career, whether it's the WWE, the U.S. Bank Stadium, or Indiana Sports Corp, what's the biggest lesson you've learned about uniting a team behind one vision?
I think it's taken me years to work at this, but I think the thing that's most important for a leader is to work to set people, to give them where we're trying to go, give them the goal, and then allow them to be their very best and allow them the room to stretch, and allow the room for them to achieve what we're trying to achieve their own way. I think a leader's job isn't to tell people how to do something. It's to tell them what the expectations are of where we want to go, and then allow them to go out and do that. And I think that's where I've seen the most success with the teams I've been on, is when people are able to bring themselves authentically to the team and to deliver on how they wanted to deliver on it, and be creative and feel fulfilled. That's really been the magic. I really think that's been a lot of it. For me, I think also, I definitely try very hard to be the last person to talk. I try very hard to listen. I try very hard to take opinions from a lot of different sources, and really try to understand what my teammates are saying, what they mean, how they're feeling, in order to take all that in and make the best decision possible. And then I think the other thing that leaders have to do is you have to be ready to take the blame when things don't go right, and share all the credit and with those and that builds more trust and with your team than anything else. If they feel like you have their back, and if they make mistakes, they're not going to be blamed for that. And we talk here, we say that mistakes are future successes. And if you're not making mistakes, then you're probably not stretching yourself. You're probably not taking chances. You're probably not trying new things and being uncomfortable. And it's important for us to be successful and to be creative and do great things. There's going to be times that we're going to make mistakes.
You said as a leader, you have to be accountable, like take the blame. But what's the difference between taking the blame, saying, okay, this is on me, versus holding a team member accountable, saying, okay, you did mess up, but improve this? Like, how do you differentiate when to cross that line, saying?
I think it's the public versus the private side of that. So publicly, the leader should take the accountability and the responsibility, and it's the whole team, wasn't as successful as we want to be. And that's the leader's job to help us get there. But privately, there's nothing wrong with talking to people and talking to your teammates about expectations. And here is what I see as a leader that we need to do better. Here's what I think we need to work on. Here's how I think we can get there. And some of it is also asking them, because most times people know when something didn't go right, and they have their own, they know they have their own feelings. They have their own, hey, I could have done better. They have their own feelings. And if you talk to them about it, and it's build that trust. If you have that trust with them, they'll share hey, yeah, I made the wrong decision. I should have turned left when I turned right. And we can talk about that and say, okay, well, when we are faced with these type of situations again, which way are we going to turn next time? And you can talk to them about what your expectations are and what you saw. And I've been a big believer in how did they arrive? What steps did they go to get to that last decision where they turned left instead of right? And if that's the mistake, that's an easy one. It's all these steps beforehand. If they didn't do these steps beforehand, that's where you have to have the conversations hey, my expectations are that you're doing this, 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 and this, and get to this decision point. And you got to basically you have a 50-50 chance to make the right decision on that. But if you do all the right steps, then you're going to make the right decision. And so I think it's about that public versus that private. And I think that's really important when you think about accountability versus taking responsibility.
Going back on trust, if a new hire or an intern comes into Indiana Sports Corp, what is the fastest way they can build that accountability and build that trust so when senior leaders look at them, they can say, I can trust this person?
And this isn't mine, so I want to give credit where credit's due, but I heard this on a podcast and I thought about it for many years, and I believe it's true. You have to give trust right away. You can't expect people to earn trust. You have to give it to them, and then they lose trust. And that simple mind shift is the difference in the world. So when people come in, you give them the trust, and then they erode that trust that you've given them, and then you take those you take the steps when you have the erosion of trust. And it's bad if people erode that trust because you're giving it to them. But as a leader, I believe you have to give the trust. It's very difficult. You can't say to someone, you have to earn my trust, because then you're being, you're being skeptical and they don't know how to earn your trust because, they've just started. How are they supposed to know how to show you that they can be trustworthy? How are they supposed to know how to make those decisions? And then if they're nervous and scared all the time, then they're not going to take the chances and achieve great things because they're going to be nervous about, I got to build this trust. I got to earn their trust. So I'm not going to make these great decisions. And that's not a recipe for winning either. So I think you have to give it first, and then they lose that.
About taking those chances, do you think innovation comes from leaders at the top pushing for it or giving your team the space to take those risks?
I think it comes from the top of creating the space. You have to create the space, but you also have to create the environment. So the part that the leader pushes down is the environment that allows people to be innovative and creative, and then you allow them that space to make those decisions. And what I mean by that environment is that you have an environment where mistakes are they're not people don't get in trouble for mistakes. You talk about mistakes, you learn from mistakes, and you get better from mistakes, but you allow mistakes to happen, and it's okay to make mistakes. I think it's also that you create that environment of we're going to take chances, we're going to stretch, we're going to take swings, and we as an organization sometimes we're going to miss, and sometimes we're going to hit a home run, and we're okay with that. But you talk about that transparently with the whole group. Not hide the mistakes that we make. I mean, I try to be very, there's been times where I've said to the team, hey, I made the decision, that was a bad decision, and that wasn't great, and that's my fault. And that you talk about that transparently, and that makes it just builds that trust. And that's the way that I think creativity really happens, is people are like, oh, okay, yeah, I can make these mistakes. And so I think it's a little bit of both. You have to push the environment, but then you have to give the space. And if you give that space, you have no idea where that idea is going to be and what's going to come out of it, because some amazing things will happen if you truly give space for someone to be creative.
If a company does give some space to be creative and someone is just starting out, how do they practice being innovative and creative without pushing the boundary when they are still supposed to follow a playbook?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think that's partly the culture of the company. I think in terms of what are they trying to achieve? I think some companies are more set up to be innovative and creative than other companies. Like if you're in a manufacturing where you've got to get things, they have to be tolerances have to be really tight, and it's safety and things like that. There's not a lot of room for creativity, and you don't want people taking chances and changing things and things like that. You want them to follow the playbook exactly. In our industry and here at the Sports Corp, we can take chances. We can try things. We can be different because that is what our industry allows. It allows for those type of things. So I think it partly depends on what you're doing, and I think it's also the maturity of the organization too. I would say when I arrived back in 2019, I feel like we were just starting to kind of come out of, we were just starting in the phase of where we were thinking about things differently. We expanded our marketing team. We'd kind of done things the same way for a while, and that's where the industry was. But it was starting to change and evolve, and we were flexible and nimble and could respond to that, which then drove creativity and innovation. So I think a company, as they're looking at their surroundings and they're having to respond to the market, when markets are in drastic change and markets are in flux, they have to make those nimble, quick changes. I mean, look at college sports. Probably one of the best examples right now. College sports is, you think about the seismic shift that has happened in just about 3 years. It is mind-blowing to think how different college sports was right before the pandemic and how different it is now, where we're actually, players are sharing in the media rights, and they have name, image, and likeness deals now, and they have the transfer portal and all the things that they used to not have. That happened very quickly. And so college sports, if that industry was just sitting on its laurels and just trying to run like it was and not allowing innovation and change and being nimble, it would have just withered up and died. But they've been nimble and they've changed, and there's been a lot of push and I wouldn't say that they willingly changed first. There was outside factors that were pushing them, but they've embraced it, changed, and we're better. And now college sports is better for it. But the change keeps happening, and so they have to keep being nimble. And so that industry, very much so, they have to really prioritize innovation and creativity where others don't.
You've said that hosting world-class events is more than the competition. It's also about the people behind the scenes who make it happen. How do you keep your team motivated and make sure they feel like their work truly matters?
I think part of what, I think one of it being keeping them motivated is being transparent with them, and that transparency is, in how we make decisions on what events we're going after, what is the discussions that the board has that we can communicate with the employees, so they know what their work environment is and what the factors are that's driving their everyday life. And I think with the employees, it it takes a great team to do what we do. And it also takes tons of volunteers in the community, but this team is the interface between those volunteers, and they have to be passionate about wanting to drive our community forward and working with those volunteers. And they do a great job of that. And I think what keeps them going is our ability to see true outcomes that our community is better than it was before this event happened. So when you're working with swimming trials, you can actually see how great Georgia Street is. You can see people that are learning to swim because of the event. You can see little kids reading books in a place that hadn't been a library before. You can see kids going to a fan fest that would not otherwise ever be able to go. You can see athletes having getting ready to compete at the highest level, having their dreams come true, and being thankful and grateful and just the wonderment in their eyes. You can see that. You can see tangible things. You can see the volunteers and how excited they are to come down and work. All those type of things are those connections that keep you motivated to wanting to do more, wanting to be great, wanting to deliver that excellence.
You've already led some of the biggest events in sports and have been recognized as one of Indiana's most influential leaders. But for students and young professionals listening today who are just starting their journey, what's the one piece of advice you'd wish you had heard at 20?
I think the thing that I wish I had really thought about is, I'll give two pieces of advice. First is, someone told me early on, is never shut down any opportunities just because you don't think it's the perfect job or the right job right away. Take every opportunity and every job and take it, do the best that you can, learn from it, and take those positive and negatives and take that to your next job. It'll make you better. And those stack and those get better. And I think, we have moved around. I've moved, all over the country doing different things. And I've always found things that I've enjoyed and loved at every stop, and things that I didn't like. And I took all those learnings, and that shaped me as a leader. The other thing I think that I wish I would have known earlier on is that whole concept of allowing people room and to be creative and to drive their to have the space in order for them to execute how they see fit. As a leader, allow people to be great. Be comfortable that people will look good and they'll do great, and surround yourself with people who are experts in their space and that are smarter and help you make great decisions. I think it's that confidence. If I wish I would have known earlier to surround myself with great people, because that will make you a better leader. But I think it's the confidence that you have to have and the comfortness with yourself to allow that to happen, to bring people in that are going to be successful.
To wrap up the podcast, I'd like to do a couple just rapid fire questions.
Excellent.
So what is one book, podcast, or resource you'd recommend students who want to lead?
I'm a big believer in The Working Genius by Patrick Lencioni. We use that here as a team, and that's your 6 working geniuses, and it's all about work. So that is one that I say you should absolutely do. And then another one that I have read that I absolutely go back to time and time and time again whenever I think about it is the Likability Factor, by Tim Sanders. That book is, it's got so many great nuggets, and it's about how how your likability will help you propel you forward in your career.
If you weren't working in sports, what would you be doing?
I'd be flying somewhere. I wanted to be a Navy pilot when I was younger, and I was medically ineligible. But I would want to do that. I'd want to fly and work in something like that.
Favorite Indianapolis sports memory?
Ooh, boy. I will tell you that winning the Eastern Conference Championship this year, being there to see the Pacers do that was unbelievable. I think that was absolutely incredible. 2021 Final Four, the final game, that is probably the memory that sticks in my head of like the most amazing, feat that we were able to pull off. Planning an entirety of the tournament in 75 days and seeing it all come to an end here in Indy and celebrate a champion, and to know what the community did for that, that's probably the best moment, the greatest moment that I still cherish right now.
Thank you for your time.
No, thank you. Appreciate it for having me.